Hi guys, today I want to talk about the Antichrist. I did a lot of studying today, so sorry this is uploaded so late. And so I want to talk about a few things. So I was reading in Isaiah 28, the five I wills. I meant Isaiah 14. Sorry about that. Isaiah 14, and where Satan is talking about the five I wills. I will ascend to heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. But I wanted to concentrate on verse 15. It talks about, you shall be brought down to Sheol, which is Hades, to the lowest depths of the pit. And those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble? Who shook kingdoms? Who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities? Who did not open the house of his prisoners? He will be, at the second coming, Jesus, when he returns with us, he will cast the Antichrist and the false prophet into the lake of fire at that point. Then, before the millennial kingdom, he's going to lock Satan up, put a seal on him in the pit where he cannot get out for 1,000 years. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, he's going to release Satan at that point, and then Satan will go out and deceive all the nations, and then they will eventually at that point be destroyed at that point after he deceives them all. So that's how it's going to play out. But I wanted to point out verse 24 in Isaiah 14. The Lord of hosts has sworn, saying, surely as I thought, so it shall come to pass. And as I have purposed, so it shall stand. In verse 25, that I will break the Assyrian in my land. So Isaiah refers to the Antichrist as the Assyrian. That's another name for him. And when it says in my land, that's referring to Jerusalem, because that is where God has claimed where he's going to rule and reign from. So the Assyrian in my land. So I wanted to point that out. Then I read in Ezekiel 28. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I will let you read it. You need to read this whole chapter for sure. But I will point out a couple things. He calls him the Prince of Tyre, but it's actually Satan. Now this is verse 1. Because your heart is lifted up, and you say, I am a god. I sit in the seat of gods, in the midst of the seas. Now that goes along with 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin, that would be the Antichrist, is revealed. Then at the midpoint, when he gets resurrected, then he becomes the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that's called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So that's the same as Isaiah 28 verse 1. And you say, I am a God. I sit in the seat of gods. In the midst of the seas, now that is the same as Daniel 11 verse 45. Look it up. And then verse 6, he says it again, because you have set your heart as your heart of a god. Same thing. They will throw you down into the pit and in the midst of the seas. So you shall die in the pit and in the midst of the seas. Same language as we just went over. Will you still say before him who slays you, I am a god, but you shall be a man and not a god, in the hand of him who slays you. You shall die the death of the uncircumcised. Okay, now this is interesting. The uncircumcised actually goes to 1 Samuel 17, where David is fighting Goliath. And in that chapter, which I will let you read yourself, but it talks about 666, and it mentions bronze and iron. So pay attention to those two words. Bronze and iron is always associated with the Nephilim or the Rephaim. It's always talking about it. Now I wanted to point out in verse, so 1 Samuel 17, verse 26. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? Then he repeats it in verse 36. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defiled the armies of the living God. So, could it be? Very well could be that the Antichrist will be a Nephilim, because it talks about bronze and iron, and Daniel talks about that as well. As a matter of fact, let's just go to Daniel, because I wanted to point that out. Daniel, we'll start in chapter 7. Okay, verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth, and it was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So he talks about the iron in that verse. Then in verse 19, it mentions it again. Then I wished to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up before, which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth that spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. But I wanted to point that out. It mentions iron and bronze, and that's in Daniel 7, verse 19. Then, Daniel 8 talks about the Antichrist too. And that starts in verse 23. Through 25. And then Daniel 9:27. But he shall bring an end to the sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. Now that is talking about the Antichrist. I know that some people out there teach that, no, it's Jesus was the one that he's going to cancel that covenant with many. No, Jesus doesn't make a covenant with anybody and then all of a sudden cancel it. He never does that. When Jesus makes a covenant, when God makes a covenant, it's a forever covenant. So just so you know that. But Daniel chapter 11 talks about the Antichrist, how he magnifies himself. That's in verse 36, above every god, and he'll speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath, God's wrath, is complete, has been accomplished. What has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard for any God, for he shall exalt himself above them all. So he's going to say, no, I'm God, above all gods. And then he will plant his tents in between the seas. That's in verse 45. So anyway, read chapter 11. Because, so it'd be 11 verses 30, 33, no, 35, all the way through 45. And then, chapter 12, it talks about, in verse 11, and from that time that the daily sacrifices is taken away. So again, he's saying the daily sacrifices will be taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up. There shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. So, yes, the sacrifices and offerings will be taken away. The Antichrist will take that away from the Jews. And he will set up the abomination that causes desolation. Okay. Oh, back to Ezekiel, because I wanted to point something out and something else out in Ezekiel. So Ezekiel 28, it talks about that his covering was full of jewels, precious stones. And that's in verse 13. Yeah, verse 13. And that goes along with Revelation chapter 21, verses 18 through 21. It talks about those jewels in the New Jerusalem, which we get to inherit. So this is why Satan hates us so much, is because we're going to get what he lost. So I'm sure that that really ticks him off, that he can't have that anymore, and we get it. So anyway, that's in Revelation 21, 18 through 21. And what else do we, I think I got the cast out. He says, therefore I cast you out as a profane thing. That goes along with Revelation chapter 12, when he casts Satan down. And then when Satan comes to earth along with his angels, then he goes out and tries to annihilate the offspring, the woman who escapes to the wilderness, and the offspring, which would be the remnant. So there's that. Let's look at Micah chapter 5. Still don't feel good. Micah chapter 5. Verses 5 through 9. When the Assyrian comes into our land, and when he treads in our palaces. Now he calls him the Assyrian as well. Then we will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princely men. They shall waste with a sword the land of Assyria, and the land of Nimrod, he calls them. Mentions Nimrod at its entrances. Thus he shall deliver us from the Assyrian when he comes into our land, and when he treads within our borders. Then he goes on to talk about the remnant, which is the 144,000 will be included with that remnant. But I find that interesting. He calls them the Assyrian, and then he mentions the land of Nimrod. So I wanted to point that out to you. Now let's go to Zechariah chapter 11, verse 12. Then I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me wages. If not, refrain. So they weighed out my wages, 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that priceless price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Then I cut in two my other staff bonds, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. And the Lord said to me, next, take for yourself the implements of a foolish shepherd, for indeed I will raise up a shepherd in the land. Now we know the land is referred to Jerusalem, but here he's talking about the Antichrist. He says, and then, next, take up for yourself the implements of a foolish shepherd, for indeed I will raise up a shepherd in the land, who will not care for those who are cut off, nor seek the young, nor heal those that are broken, nor feed those that still stand. But he will eat the flesh of the fat and tear them their hoofs in pieces. Woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against his arm and against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither, and his right eye will be totally blinded. I wonder if that's why the mark of the beast is going to have to do with the forehead, which is close to the eye, and the right hand. I think they're related. I do. So there's that. And yes, that goes along with Revelation 13, verses 16 through 17. And also Revelation 14, verse 11, with the right hand and the forehead. Okay, let's go to John. This was the first time Jesus was talking about the Antichrist. So John chapter 5, verse 43. I have come to in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. And the mark of the beast is actually related to his name. It says, if you read in Revelation 13, it says the number of his name. So they are related. John 17:12. While I was with them in the world, I kept them in your name. Those whom you gave me, I have kept, and none of them is lost, except the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. And then John 14, verse 30. I will no longer talk much more with you, for the ruler of this world is coming, and he has nothing in me. But that the world may know that I love the Father, and as the Father gave me commandments, so I do. Arise, let us go from here. So Jesus called him the ruler of this world. But he also called Judas the son of perdition. And then 1 John 2:18. Little children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist, capital A, is coming. Even now many antichrists have come, by which we know it is the last hour. They went out from us. Who did? The antichrists. They went out from us, but they were not of us. So they were not believers. They were antichrist spirits. They were totally antichrist. That's why they went out from us. So, but he calls them the Antichrist. Then Paul refers to, I think we already talked about that. He calls him the son of perdition. He calls him the man of sin. That's in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. The man of sin, the son of perdition, and the lawless one. So he's got three names for him. So there's that. And then Revelation, it mentions the beast. Calls him the beast. that comes up from the sea, which is actually, the sea means nations, but when he's talking about the land, then that means Israel. In this case, this beast comes up from the sea. Now, I don't know, he could be part Jewish, I have no idea. It's very possible. But that's what I wanted to point out to you, but he's extremely blasphemous. The dragon, which is Satan, gives him his throne and great authority. So they are two separate entities. So the dragon, which is Satan, gives the beast his power and great authority. But they are different entities. Just so you understand that they are not the same entity. And then he raises up from his deadly wound, and everybody says, who is able to make war with him? They just marvel over that. And then he will continue for 42 months. That's 3.5 years. And he overcomes the saints, it says. He overcomes them. Now, if you read Daniel 7:25, it mentions that he will prevail over the saints. Well, that's not us, because in Matthew 16:18 it says the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. So he's not talking about the church, he's talking about the tribulation saints. That he will be able to overcome them. Most definitely. And I think the image of the beast, I think that's going to be AI. Most definitely. It sure seems like it. Everything is all falling into place. Everything is coming to a point. Now, there's nothing more that needs to be fulfilled. I believe that this is it. We are going to get raptured here anytime now. This just can't keep going on and on and on, especially the evil. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. You know, there's a lot of talk about people are seeing, aliens and stuff like that, but we don't know if those are hoaxes or what. But we have to make sure that we're settled in our hearts, that if we ever see a spaceship, a UFO, or if we think that there's some type of being and we don't know what it is, rebuke first and ask questions later. If you question anything you see, make sure you rebuke first in the name of Jesus, ask questions later. So, and don't let anything shake your faith. These are the days of deception, and we got to be really sound in our doctrine and firm in our faith. So, all right, you guys, I think that's it. If I have more, I will, I'm sure, do another video on it. So, if you have any questions, just comment. Put them in the comments. Okay? So, all right. Okay. We'll see you soon. Bye.